Let's go ahead and just get started on the gender issue. What a hot topic it is right now. Oh my goodness. There's so much going on, and the way that we really grow is that we be informed. We don't bury our head in the sand. And so I really am grateful for you for really traveling and taking time away from your family to spread this message. So I'll let you just jump right into it.
Well, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, literally every day you just open up the news and it's just a different headline that just leaves you scratching your head. It's just like, how is this even happening? Like, what
Right.
what is going on in the culture? And people see this. I mean, the kids filling out their college application and it has them picking their gender, and there's 18 to pick from, and Facebook has 58 genders. Facebook in the UK has 71 genders, and a lot of people are just like, this is just nonsense, and they kind of just want to dismiss it all. And I understand the temptation to do that. And then other people just want to debate the thing. But we have to, I think it's important that we keep in mind that gender theory and transgender ideology is distinct from gender dysphoria, which is
Mm.
something that some individuals really wrestle with. And if these individuals feel like all we have for them is a mockery of their beliefs, they're going to realize, okay, well, there's no room for me in the church to navigate through these things, and they're out. And so we've got to learn how to walk that rope, the tightrope of compassion and truth, clarity and charity at the same time. And so
Yeah.
that's the challenge, because a lot of people are like, I don't even know where to begin with this stuff. I mean, what does this mean? Non-binary, gender fluid, trans woman? What the heck is that? So it
Right.
can be a bit overwhelming, but we might need to learn a little bit of this new language to be able to walk with these people in truth and love.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's jump right into it. What do you got for us?
Well, I mean, we've got to look at it, as I said, from an individual perspective. So, I'll meet these kids after the talk, and they'll come up and say, "Hey, Jason, I'm trans." And instead of just trying to disprove their anthropology, what I try to do is just start asking some questions. Well, tell me about that. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your life. I remember one Protestant pastor said that if someone in your congregation comes up and says that they're trans, what you should say to them is, "Well, I feel like I'm meeting you in chapter 8 of your life, but I haven't had the opportunity to learn about chapters 1 through 7, but I'd
Mm.
really like to. You want to have coffee." And so we've got to begin by listening instead of just debating. Um, and so I'll just say, "Hey, tell me about your life." We'll start talking. I remember one boy said, "Yeah, well, I've got, mom and a dad. I've got two older sisters, two younger sisters." And he's like, "You know what? It's like they can't do anything wrong. My parents love them. They're affectionate to them. And but me, I'm like the black sheep of the family. Even though I have straight A's and I'm on the swim team, nothing I do is ever good enough for my parents." And he just went on and on. And I just said, "Well, do you think if you were born a girl, you would have been loved the way your sisters are loved?" And he said, "I know I would have been."
Mm.
And to me, it's like, okay, here we go. Like, his ache isn't to be female, his ache is to be loved, but he
Mm.
sees that female identity as an opportunity to receive the affirmation that he was created for. And so everybody's got their own story. And so you can't take a cookie cutter approach to it and just say, "Hey, well, this is what caused that." Everyone has a different story, and we need to listen to those stories so we can walk with these individuals to help them realize they weren't born into the wrong body. They were kind of born into the wrong culture, a culture that's telling them that they have to hurt their body in order to be their authentic self. And so we've got to have that compassion, but at the same time, learn this subject matter so we can speak with clarity to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that compassion and that listening part is like ultimately important. So you really do, like you're describing, find the source of the issue.
Yeah, and sometimes that's possible. Sometimes through, counseling and friendship, you can kind of get to the root of, hey, like, where's this coming from? And sometimes it's abuse, where they're dissociating from their body as a trauma response to the suffering that they've experienced in their bodies. Other times it's they're trying to distance themselves from these overly rigid gender stereotypes, where you've got an adolescent girl and she's expected to live up to all these flawless, over sexualized images on social media, and she doesn't even want to live up to that stuff. So a lot of
Mm.
these girls who are quote unquote transitioning are not transitioning to male. They're calling themselves non-binary, which means like somewhere between male and female, or outside of the categories of male and female. Abigail Schreier wrote a great book on this called Irreversible Damage, and she said that young women, are fleeing womanhood like a house on fire. without any particular destination in mind other than just to escape. And so a lot of these girls are like, okay, what do I need to do to get out of this? All these pressures. Well, and you go to the public school and they say, well, you can take puberty blockers and change your preferred pronouns and get cross-sex hormones and maybe surgery. Then you'll feel at home in your own body. But the problem is you put these kids on puberty blockers and they're starting to put these kids on them as young as 9 years old.
Mm.
And on 99% of the kids that go on the puberty blockers go on to get cross-sex hormones, and going from one to the other sterilizes you for the rest of your life. And then they put the girls on testosterone. That quadruples her risk of getting heart disease. She's going to have to get a hysterectomy within 5 years because of the increased risk of endometrial cancer.
Mm.
Um, and then they say, well, if that's not enough, well, then, you get a surgery. So these girls are getting top surgeries, which means a double mastectomy, and are told, well, if you ever change your mind, you could just have another surgery and get your breast back. Like,
Mm.
no, like, it doesn't work like that. And these girls are going through these operations in Oakland, California. The hospital out there is doing double mastectomies on 12-year-old girls. In
Wow.
Los Angeles, 13-year-old girls. In Oregon, the age of parental consent is 15 years old, meaning a 15-year-old girl, once she reaches that age, can get a double mastectomy without her parents' approval. Now,
Mm.
she can't use a tanning salon till she's 17, can't get a tattoo till she's 21, but if you want a double mastectomy, you can get that 15 years of age. And then the girls go through this, and then the anesthesia wears off, and then the surgical dressings are removed, and they look at their body, and some of them are met with just immediate shock and horror of just like, what did I do to my body?
Yeah.
And they're suing these gender clinics, and they're winning. The biggest gender clinic in the United Kingdom is called the Tavistock Gender Clinic, and a transitioner out there, Kira Bell, sued them. It went up all the way to the High Court, and the government ruled for that gender clinic, the biggest one in the United Kingdom, to be shut down this spring.
Mm.
And so she won that initial court case, and so things are changing over there because the data is coming in that these procedures are not solving problems; they're creating them and making them worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And and as you point out, it's not reversible. So what are our options, as caring people who want to, and faithful people who want to really help in this situation, but we just don't know what to do.
Yeah, well, first we need to befriend these individuals instead of treating them like they have leprosy, of
Yeah.
just like, oh no, I can't be around that person.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if they don't, I mean, that's not what Christ would have done. Christ would have been having dinner at their house. Christ
Yeah.
would have been walking with them and listening and,
Yeah.
helping them to, the phrase I use is kind of try to listen to gender dysphoria with reverent curiosity,
Mm.
not for the sake of just obeying it wherever direction it's pulling them, but seeing it is in a sense a roadmap toward their healing. Not in the sense of, okay, well then if I feel dysphoric about my body, I must be in the wrong body. It's like, well, where's this coming from? And when did it start coming up? And what triggers that dysphoria? Is it when you have to dress in a overly feminine way, or is it the expectations you have, or is it the interest you have, maybe as a young girl, or more stereotypically masculine, and that's caused you to question your female identity. And so what we've got to do is help, in a sense, broaden their understanding of what it means to be male and female. I sometimes mention in my talk a nun I had lunch with named Sister Deidre Burns, and she's a nun. She's a doctor. She's a surgeon. She's a colonel in the United States Army.
Uh,
When I met her, I was thinking like, did you not want to be an astronaut because you're lazy? Like,
ah.
what's with you
Yeah.
hogging all these vocations? But she wasn't doing these things instead of motherhood. She was mothering through these things.
Yeah.
And so we need to help the young people to understand that if you're a boy and you're into theater and poetry and art, it doesn't mean you're not a man. I mean, the manliest guy I ever met was John Paul II, and he loved those things.
Right.
And so we've got to help them to understand that gender stereotypes try to get a person to conform their personality to match their body, meaning
Mm.
your body is male and your personality doesn't line up. We got to fix that personality and shove it into this male box.
Yeah.
Now, gender theory does the opposite, where it tries to take a person's body and conform it to their personality, meaning your personality is a little bit more effeminate. Well, then we need to surgically or hormonally alter your body to fit your personality.
Mm.
And neither one of those approaches is healthy.
Yeah. 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 So, you know, we listen to them, we talk to them, we show compassion, we listen with reverent curiosity, and then what? Because there's so much that needs to occur in order to turn this around. It feels like we are way past that slippery slope. We are way past that, and we are going at full speed. And so how do we give us some more ideas on how we can turn this around?
Well, we got to speak up and be bold about this because the vast majority of Americans are not on board with this transgender ideology thing. They're not, but they just kind of keep quiet about it because it's socially or financially, expedient to do so. Because it's like, well, if I speak up in the workplace, I'm going to be labeled a transphobic bigot and I'm going to get fired. So I better just shut up and kind of toe the party line. We have to speak up. I mean, they can't fire all of us. And you look at what happened with Bud Light recently. I mean, they had this trans activist put on one of their beer cans, did a little commercial, whatever. They lost $5 billion in about a week. That's a lot of America standing up saying, not on board with this stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's a very silent majority and a very vocal minority. And we've got to speak up like, no, this is not in the best interest of our children. And I'm not afraid to say so because someone has to speak up for the rights of these kids. I mean, they're getting done with these surgeries and their suicide rate is climbing 19 times higher than the general population about a decade after the surgery. And they're saying, why did I do this to myself? And better yet, how did you adults let me do this to myself and just kind of pat me along through this whole transition process? I'm reading a book right now about the collapse of the Tavistock Gender Clinic in the United Kingdom. And it was interesting. They had a psychologist there who was working with the young people who are experiencing gender dysphoria, and he had his own group, class with these kids and helping them through these issues. And then he decided, well, I've got this other group, session I'm meeting with of the people who've had the surgeries and are wrestling with the fallout. What if I just combine these two groups and just let them meet each other and talk about their shared experiences? Once he did that, where he put the people who had the surgery and were wrestling with the fallout with the young people who are contemplating getting the surgeries, 98% of the kids who wanted to transition decided they do not want to transition. So I think it's very important we hear the voices of these detransitioners. There's a website called reddit.com where there's communities of people you can connect with and have shared interests. One of the subreddits is hashtag detrans. Those are people that are detransitioning that have maybe started socially or hormonally or surgically. There's 46,000 of them now. And these people's voices need to be heard. I mean, you can just get on YouTube and just type in detransitioner and just endless testimony. I mean, Jordan Peterson did a great interview with one of them called Chloe Cole. And, she went through the whole thing, the puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, double mastectomy. And she just pours her heart out about how hard this is right now to be like a 20-year-old girl coming to the realization she'll never be able to breastfeed her children. Not just for the function of that, but for the bonding of that, for the sake of the child who won't ever receive that. And then just the side effects that she's having with hormones and urinary tract infections and just all the stuff they never told her would be part of this. And so she's not only starting up some lawsuits, there's more than 1,000 lawsuits against one gender clinic alone in the United Kingdom that are pending. And so there's going to be a tsunami of litigation coming in. And I think that is the only thing that's going to turn the tide at this point.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I love the idea of putting those who are thinking about transitioning, thinking that that's what they need to do with those who already have, so they can see this is the truth of where it is. These people that have gone through this, they're not out there making the dollar on it that the doctors are that are saying, let's have a double mastectomy. They aren't making anything on it, and they're living with the results. And so to really put them into that conversation so that they can discuss it truthfully is such an important thing.
Yeah, and the money that's going on here is absolutely staggering. It's only a few years away from being a multi-billion-dollar industry, because if you get a kid to go on cross-sex hormones and they want to keep up the look that they get from testosterone or whatever, they have to be on that for the rest of their natural life. It's not like they can just take the medicine and they're good. I mean, if they go off it in 3 weeks, their body wants to revert back to its normal state. And so it's a lifelong medicalization. If some of these people go through the transition surgeries, Like for example, if a guy gets what's called an orchiectomy, which is basically castration, he now even if he changes his mind and says, "Oh, that was a horrible decision. I want to re-identify as male." Great. Now he needs a lifetime of testosterone supplements because his body can't produce it on its own anymore. So even if they detransition, they stay in a sense a slave to big pharma. And so the pharmaceutical companies are making an insane amount of money on this. That's why Planned Parenthood is jumping headlong into this whole puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones business because there's a ton of money to be found there. And then the surgeries. I mean, some of these operations cost upwards of $40,000, $50,000 a piece. I mean, these girls that want double mastectomies, it's a $10,000 procedure. They don't have the money for that. So the girls are going on websites like GoFundMe.com
Mm.
asking for people to donate so they can have a top surgery and be in their true self. And so how many girls have a GoFundMe page now? 40,000 girls have a GoFundMe page asking for people to donate money so they can mutilate their bodies. And so this is absolute child abuse. And this is not a left versus right issue. There are extremely left wing, liberal, Democrat, pro choice, and even people in the trans community crying out to hit the brakes on this thing and stop it. And so we've got to kind of raise our voices together to defend these kids against the industry that's making a heck of a lot of money pretending to do its best for them.
Yeah, exactly. And let's bring it a little bit closer to home too. You talked about the 19% increase in suicide rate 1 year after surgery, but that's the lie that's being told to so many of the parents. If you don't agree to this, your child's going to commit suicide because they're in the wrong body. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
how do we battle against that? Knowledge, obviously. Any other suggestions for the parents who have a child who is thinking that they need to transition?
Well, when girls go on puberty blockers, they actually become more likely to self harm after going on the puberty blockers than they were before. And this suicide narrative is obviously a very powerful narrative where they tell the parents, well, what would you rather have, a live son or a dead daughter?
Yeah.
In other words, if you don't let your child transition, then you're complicit in your child's own death. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really scary stuff to put on a parent, but it's absolutely false. I mean, look at history. There was not this gigantic number of young people committing suicides until they invented puberty blockers. Then all of a sudden, the suicide rates plummeted like a polio vaccine that finally wiped out the disease. That never happened. That's a completely false narrative. In fact, the providing of these services is creating the problem because when they go through the transitioning, as you had mentioned, the suicide rate climbs to 19, not percent, 19 times higher than the general
Oh my
population.
gosh.
And if
Yeah.
you isolate out the female to male transitioners, the suicide rate is more than 40% high, 40 times higher than the general population. And the real core reason for this is not because of transphobic bigots that hate trans people. That's not it. The real reason for this is because 90% of people who commit suicide have a diagnosable mental health disorder.
Mm.
And you don't treat those things with surgery and hormones. I know an anesthesiologist who won't even participate in the surgery if it's for one of these gender surgeries. He's told the doctors, don't even talk to me about giving your patient anesthesia. I won't because I've seen the medical charts. The comorbidities of autism, depression, anxiety, broken families, sexual abuse, and to put these kids under the knife, making them think these problems are going to go away. He said that is malpractice and I will have nothing to do with it. He said you're actually distracting these kids from what actually needs clinical psychological intervention.
Mm.
There's these deeper issues and it's just turning the pathway into, oh, you're trans, you transition, then things will get better. And that's the lie that's being fed to these kids and their families. And the data is increasingly become more and more clear. That's why in the Western Europe countries where they started this stuff, in Amsterdam, you look what's going on in Sweden, Finland, they're changing course. It's very difficult to get puberty blockers now in the Scandinavian countries because the data's in. It didn't work. It was a failed science experiment. It's only here over in the West, America and Canada, places like that, we still have our pedal to the metal on it, but it's only going to be a matter of time. And these lawsuits come in before corporations and entire medical institutions are bankrupt because of it.
Yeah. And it's a necessary thing. It's a necessary thing that we really, because that's what's going to speak to the people that are doing this, since they're all about the money. When they start losing the money because of it through the lawsuits, that's when it's going to stop, is what I hear
Hmm.
you saying anyway.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. Because I mean, it's right now it's very difficult. For example, if you're a psychological professional, you're a counselor, and a kid comes to you with gender dysphoria, there's more than a dozen states that have laws on the book that you are not allowed to dissuade them from transitioning, or you could lose your therapeutic license
Mm,
if you try to say, hey, well, let's try to see if we can get your body and your mind into alignment with each other without hurting your body. You can lose your license for that.
yeah.
And so a lot of counselors' hands are tied until some of these laws are changed. And some of the states are even making it more difficult. And the governor over in Colorado just announced last week that Colorado is going to be this trans tourism state, meaning if you're under 18 and you want these procedures and your parents won't let you, don't worry, you come to Colorado and we'll make sure you get your mastectomy and be your authentic self.
Mm.
And so it's unreal how much is coming against the family right now. But we've got to speak up and be bold, because the world is not on board with this. I know sports and economics and politics, it all looks like everybody's out to see on this, but the vast majority of Americans don't buy it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of like saying, God's a liar in some respect. If you say, I'm actually, a woman, but I'm in a man's body. God made us man and male and female. That's scriptural, and we know that. And so if we can't live with that, then there's a huge scriptural disconnect going on there, and it's a huge problem. We all know it's a huge problem. I'm stating the obvious right there, aren't I? So
Yeah.
so what else? We only have just about 5 minutes with you. What else would you like to share with our listening audience?
Well, if people want to really wake up to the seriousness of what's going on, one thing they could do is watch a documentary that came out by Matt Walsh called "What Is a Woman."
Mm,
It's about an hour long, but oh boy, this will open your eyes up real fast as to what is going on in this entire industry. So it's just called "What Is a Woman," done by Matt Walsh. Really high production quality, and he really goes behind the scenes to show you what's at stake here with this. We also just released a book called "Male, Female, Other." A Catholic Guide to Understanding Gender. And in that, I spent about 2 years researching this book and sent it off to endocrinologists, and philosophers, specialists in pediatric medicine and psychology, and got a lot of their feedback in order to make this just cutting edge, the latest research. There's more than 1,000 references in the end notes, so the scientific data is there explaining the church's answer to these questions, all these ideas of gender theory, and what about intersex conditions, and well, what about cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers and suicide, and how do we accompany these people in love? If your family members are wrestling with this, students, I'd really recommend just getting the book Male, Female, Other, A Catholic Guide to Understanding Gender. It's at chastity.com. And we just take a real deep dive into all these specifics, because college students are getting bombarded by it in the classroom, where they go to some universities I've been at, where the university actually mandates that every kid to graduate the university has to take an entire semester of gender studies. It doesn't matter if you're studying engineering, secondary education, nursing, you got to spend an entire semester getting marinated in this gender theory before you can even graduate some of these universities. So we've got to equip the college students for how to give answers to these tough questions, help the teachers, our priests, because our priests didn't go to the seminary and get taught about how to give pastoral support to people who identify as non-binary. I mean, this is new territory for a lot of us, and so we've tried to do the research on our end to give to the parents and the families. And then one last resource, our website, chastity.com. If you do chastity.com/gender, that's where we kind of house all the different links that we discover of different support groups, networks, podcasts, ministries, legal organizations, advocacy groups for families that families can use, schools can use to kind of craft policies. So that way, when parents come to join a school, they can know, hey, look, this is where we stand on this stuff when it comes to bathrooms and pronouns. So the church and the schools aren't in a reactive position. They can get policies in place to protect the students, and the school itself.
mm. Really wonderful. So again, that's chastity.com/gender. Go there. You can find a lot of great information. You can get the book Male, Female, Other by Jason Everett. Lots of great information there. So last thoughts. We have just about 2 more minutes with you. Last thoughts that you'd like to share before I know you're busy before you're ready to move on to other things. So, last thoughts.
Yeah, I would encourage people, do your homework on this stuff. Like, really research this, learn about this topic, because it's just a matter of time before you hear, oh wow, my niece is wanting to transition to my nephew, and we've got a kid in the confirmation class that wants a female confirmation name. What do we do here? We've got a kid on the high school retreat that wants to be the homecoming queen, but he's a guy, and we need to be in a position where we've done some homework on this. We understand it, and to try to be clear in our language, meaning like we shouldn't even be talking about biological males. Like, why even add the word biological? That's like calling a square a four-sided square. Well,
Mm,
all squares are four-sided,
yeah.
and we're obfuscating language by saying, well, that person's trans. No, that person is not trans. The person's male or female. They're an individual created and loved by God who's wrestling with gender dysphoria, but trans is not their identity. A beloved child of God is their identity. And if we start
Mm,
talking about there being trans kids versus cis kids and non-binary kids, we're taking on this language that is not Catholic. I mean, this is not Christian anthropology, that you can be one thing and your body can be another thing. This is a dualism that Christianity has been fighting from the start, that I'm one thing and my body is something else. No, the body is the person. It reveals the person, and that our bodies are not meaningless. Our bodies are meaningful. And so make sure not to mock or belittle the individuals who are struggling with this, even though some people may be tempted to just dismiss and make a joke out of the whole thing. No, these are struggling, suffering individuals, and the last thing they need from Catholics is just a belittling attitude that dismisses the tremendous sufferings that they may be going through. So we need to have compassion and give them clarity as well as charity.
mm. Very good. Very, very good. Well, I want to give you a huge thank you, not only for your time here on the radio, which we appreciate very much, but for all the traveling that you're doing and for really speaking out because it's so needed right now with all the confusion that's surrounding this subject.
I would just ask your listeners prayers for all the young people we're speaking to this weekend. I'll be in Massachusetts speaking up there on chastity and on gender. So more prayers we can get, the more fruitful the presentations are. So thanks in advance for the prayers.
Excellent. We will do that on Catholic radio so that all of us listening join hands, link hands, and we will do that at the top of this next hour. And yeah, we will be praying for you and for all that you're doing. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
God bless. Bye.
All right. So that was Jason Everett talking about the gender issue. And a difficult subject for sure, but one that we really need to be aware of and understand. And I love the compassion that he brings into that whole situation. And so again, his website, go to chastity.com. And if you want to, there's lots of information on there, but if you want to specify even more, it would be /gender. And you can go on there and you can find more information. And I would ask each and every one of you now to join me, and we're going to pray the Saint Michael prayer for him as he goes out and speaks, because there has to be all kinds of attacks and spiritual warfare going on anytime that somebody is working for the church and specifically working, in such um, a difficult subject and a one that is just taken us by storm. It really is just covering so much. So we want to stop and we want to say a prayer for him. So I ask each one of you to pray with me right now the prayer to Saint Michael. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Saint Michael the archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. We'll also pray a Hail Mary that the Blessed Mother will wrap him in her protective, beautiful mantle, keep him close to her immaculate heart, and really bring him peace and intercede for him to her spouse, the Holy Spirit, that he can speak the truth. And we'll pray together. Hail Mary, full of grace.